Now we'll be looking at the permutation rule. So to lead into that, we just discussed the factorial rule. And the key to the factorial rule is that all items were selected. We were rearranging the letters in the word nap. So what if order still mattered? What if repeats are not allowed, but not every item is being selected? So for example, in a horse race with 7 horses, how many ways is there for the race to have a first, second, and third place winner? So we don't care about the 4th through 2nd place horses. We're only taking some, not all, of the horses to win the race. And so this leads us to permutations. And the formula for permutations is n factorial divided by the quantity n minus r factorial. So again, remember, order matters, repeats are not allowed, and we're only selecting some of the items. So we say r has to be less than or equal to n, which if it's equal to n, then you're actually selecting all the items, but you'll see it works itself out. Again, there should be a built-in button in your calculator, so you shouldn't have to use the factorial button twice and divide it. You actually have a button that will say NPR, and so I just wrote it again here just in case. But you might have a PRB button on your calculator, and from there, or math, you'll find it. And keep in mind, when r equals n, then if I replace those n's with r's, I'm really going to have r over 0 factorial, which we said was 1, and anything divided by 1 is itself. And if r equals n, then it's the same thing as n factorial. And this is just the factorial rule since you selected all items. So that's why we say it's okay for n and r to be equal to each other so long as r is the same or smaller, because it'll correct itself. So now let's look at some permutation examples. In question 3a, in a horse race with 7 horses, how many ways is there for the race to have a first, second, and third place winner? We actually had asked this question before but not answered it. So first we always ask ourselves, does order matter? And since the horses are coming in first or second place, it's a ranking, so yes, order matters. Next we ask ourselves, are repeats allowed? Well, can the horse that got first place get third place in this exact same race? No. And lastly, are we selecting all? Are we taking all the horses from the race? No, we're just taking 3 of them. So we're going to use the permutation rule of NPR. N for us is 7, the total number of horses. R equals 3, the number of places, rankings, or winners that we're looking for. And so I have 7 choose 3 for a permutation, which if you'd written it out using the formula would look like 7 factorial all over 7 minus 3, or really 7 factorial over 4 factorial. But again, remember, I'm not expecting you to use the factorial button on your calculator. I'm expecting you to use your calculator button that has the NPR notation, which again might be under a PRB button, or there's a math button. But when you enter the 7, the permutation button, and then the 3, or whatever order you enter it in for your calculator, you should get 210. There's 210 different outcomes for this horse race if we're only ranking the horses in first, second, and third place. Question 3b. A committee must select a new president and secretary. If there are 12 people on the committee, how many ways can the election turn out? First question always, does order matter? And I say yes, because think of yourself. If you get elected to the president versus the secretary, do you care which title you got? Yes, since they probably have different duties, you may not like to do the duties of one of those positions. Are repeats allowed? Now, it didn't say they're not in the question, but it's always assumed no, because it's assumed the president has a full-time position, the secretary is a full-time position, and how can the same person do both, especially because one might be dictating to the other. Are we using all the people from the committee? No, we're only filling 2 positions, and there are 12 people to fill those positions. So that means of the 12, we're going to choose 2 of them for a permutation. I'm going to use the button on my calculator and get 132 different ways to select a president and secretary.